Deep Cover by GapJaxie. Read by Goombasa. Star Power sat in Twilight Sparkle's bedroom upon Twilight Sparkle's bed reading one of Twilight Sparkle's books. Any fan of the show would have recognized the room. Though it appeared in few episodes, the Tree Library bedroom had a tendency to stick in the minds of viewers with its distinctive two-story construction, shelves full of mixed books, sun and hearts motif, and numerous windows. Star Power herself liked the design very much, finding it surprisingly creative for a full show. Of course, there were a few things a fan of the show would not recognize. For instance, instead of looking out over the scenic streets of Ponyville, the windows looked out into a dark blue screen. The plants were plastic. The telescope in the foreground was just the bottom half of a telescope. The front half had been sawed off to make room for the camera in shots where Star Power used the eyepiece. The passageway below the bed did not lead to the first floor of Twilight Sparkle's library, but instead to a blank plasterboard wall. And of course the entire fourth wall opposite the bed was missing, replaced with a dark studio. The set lights were on, but the overhead studio lights were off, leaving the set brightly illuminated while the room sunk into a shadowy relief. Inactive cameras cast long shadows on the concrete floor, scattered around the blank teleprompter screen. Much of the room was fabricated this way, though not all of the props were fake. It was sometimes cheaper to simply buy an item than to make a realistic mock-up, and so a hoofful of the items on set were what they appeared to be. The drawers and closet were real and even full of clothes, though the clothes didn't fit Star Power and were never used. The heart-studded mirror above the dresser was real, if a bit awkwardly placed, and the collection of board games up on the shelf were only mostly product placement. Most relevantly to Star Power, the books were real books, and the bed was a real bed, though the mattress was hard as a rock and lacked sheets, having only a blue coverlet. Star Power, however, paid little mind to how uncomfortable the bed was, wholly absorbed in her book. Its cover depicted a shadowy mare, or perhaps simply the outline of a mare, sitting back on a dais and clad in fine robes and jewelry. She had the horn of a unicorn, the wings of a pegasus, and a powerful wide-hooved build, all somewhat distinctive, even while the details of her face and figure remained murky. Below her, in silver lettering, was inscribed, "The Princess," by Niccolò Mariavelli. Chapter 13 of Auxiliary Mixed and Native Troops. Auxiliary forces, which are the other kind of useless forces, are when one calls on a potentate to come and aid one with his troops, as was done in recent times by Trade Block, who, when seeing the wretched failure of his mercenary forces in his farrier enterprise, had recourse to auxiliaries, and arranged with Vortex, Queen of Pasofino, that she should help him with her armies. These forces may be good in themselves, but they are always dangerous for those who borrow them, for if they lose you are defeated, and if they conquer you remain their prisoner. And although ancient history is full of examples of this, I will not depart from the example of Magister Tradeblock VI, which is still fresh. Nothing could be less prudent than the course he adopted, for, wishing to take farrier, he put himself entirely into the power of a foreigner. But by good fortune there arose a third cause which prevented him repeating the efforts of his bad choice. For when his auxiliaries were beaten at Hanoverian, the unicorns of Saddle Arabia rose up and drove back the victors against all expectations of himself or others, so that he was not taken prisoner by the enemy which had fled. And so it went. Star Power turned the pages slowly, and occasionally flipped back to review earlier passages, taking her time as she went. Her eyes were narrow and intent, but her mouth was turned down into a frown, her ears and tail low against her. She remained that way for some time, until her focus was interrupted by the distant bang of an opening door. The overhead lights came on, fluorescent tubes clicking loudly as they flickered to life, one at a time, and illuminated the room below. Star Power squinted at the sudden brightness, turning her head towards the source of the noise. "Well, howdy, Star! Is that you?" called a pony across the way. "What are you doing here so late?" She was an orange earth pony, with a classically stocky frame, bright green eyes, a few freckles, and a Stetson hat perched atop her head. Her mane and tail were a golden blonde and full enough to make other mares green with envy, but loose enough that the occasional knot made it clear she ignored them. Her cutie mark was a classical steel shield decorated with a black crown and a pair of silvery insect wings studded with holes. "Oh, hey, Deep Cover," Star Power answered, looking up from the book. She waited until Deep Cover was closer before she continued. "Not much. Reading. My parents pick me up in an hour." "Pick you up? What, ain't your legs working?" Deep Cover asked, weaving her way between two cameras to step onto the set. Star Power held her forehooves tighter together and looked down at the bed, but Deep Cover spoke again before she could answer. "No, I'm just joshing ya. I'm waiting for my family, too. Ma's visiting this week and wants to go downtown, so it's easier to meet up here." "Oh, that's right," Star Power said. Her ears rotated slightly to the side as her expression remained flat. After a moment, she added, "Your family still lives out in Philadelphia, right?" "Yep. Mom and Dad both work and can't really get away, so I'm all on my lonesome up here." Deep Cover stopped on the lower level, one hoof resting on the steps that led up to the second-story loft. "Say, you didn't happen to snag one of them oat bars they had around here earlier, did you? I'm craving those things something fierce." No." Star Power paused for a long moment. "Sorry." "Ain't no need to apologize on my account," Deep Cover said, offering a small smile and tilting her ears to the side. "Were you looking for some company, or should I leave you be?" "Company would be nice, actually," Star Power said, sliding her bookmark into the book and shutting it. "This book isn't as good as I thought it would be." "Yeah? What is it?" Deep Cover asked. She turned to walk up the short stairwell to the landing above, her horseshoes making a distinctive hollow thump on the fake wood. "It's The Princess. It's supposed to be the classical book on, harsh reality and stuff." Star Power's horn glowed, and the book floated back to its place on the shelf. Is it better to be loved or feared, or why all rulers are jerks? I'd heard it was this awesome philosophy book, but so far it's just a bunch of practical advice about building fortresses and hiring mercenaries and stuff. "Well, I'm sorry to hear you ain't enjoying it," Deep Cover said, standing beside the bed. Star Power did not scoot over to make room. "I know you said your parents were making you go to college. Thinking of becoming a philosopher?" "Maybe." Star Power gently tapped her forehooves together, her gaze going off to the shelf. After a moment she said, "Do you want to, play a game or something?" I guess." Deep Cover turned to the shelf, following Star Power's gaze, then walked up to the board game stack and started sorting through it. "Huh, never knew these were real. I always assumed they just took any old board and... Hey!" Her ears perked up. "They have Go! I love Go!" She craned her neck up and took the board in her teeth, pulling it out along with 2 bags of pieces. "It's been a dog's age since I've gotten to play," she said, her voice muffled by the wood. "I don't know how to play Go," Star Power said, scooting over when Deep Cover poked her side with the board. Deep Cover crawled onto the bed beside Star Power, laying the board between them and dropping the bags of pieces on top of it. "Oh, that's okay," she said. "It's real simple. You're gonna love it." "I thought it was a weird Napanese game," Star Power said, drawing her head back and tucking in her tail. She watched as Deep Cover dumped out 2 piles of tokens, one white and one black. "It's Cheju, not Napanese. Played all around the world these days, though." Deep Cover gestured down at the board, which showed a 19-space grid of lines with a little depression at each intersection. "The basic rules are simple. I'll be black, you be white. We take turns putting tokens down on the board in those little bumpy parts here. Any token that's connected to an empty spot is free. If one token in a group is free, then they're all free. But if you run out of spots, nowhere to go the group is captured and I take your tokens. So the game's like a lasso, trying to get close around the other mayor's pieces. Whoever controls, in circles is the fancy term, the most spots at the end of the game wins. With me so far?" Star Power's eyes went wide and uncertain, but she nodded anyway. Deep Cover continued, then repeated the instructions in a variety of ways and showed Star Power several examples on the board. Star Power nodded again, saying she understood. When the time came for the game to begin, Deep Cover lowered her head like a fishing crane to pick up one of her black stones, and with an equally precise motion, deposited it near Star Power's side of the board. Star Power hesitated, glancing at Deep Cover's piece and then to her edge of the board. After a moment, she lit up her horn, levitating a piece and placing it near the center. They played thus for several more turns. At first, each scattered their tokens over the board as though at random, but by the 5th turn, Deep Cover's pieces were starting to follow Star Power's pieces, appearing adjacent to them and dodging her around the board. Star Power said as she considered her next move. Hesitantly, she laid one of her white tokens next to the black set. So, Applejack plays Cheju board games? Deep Cover narrowed her eyes at Star Power, but her jaw pulled slightly to one side. Star Power pulled back slightly, and Deep Cover picked up her next token. She placed it adjacent to the one Star Power had just laid, a tangle forming in the corner of the board. Deep Cover plays Cheju board games, she said, twitching her tail for emphasis. Y'all are aware method acting and split personality disorder ain't the same thing, right? Oh, yes. I mean, Star Power looked down at the board. Hurriedly, she took her turn, hardly even bothering to look at what she was doing. Deep Cover countered equally quickly. You're just so devoted to staying in character, so it was kind of surprising. I mean, it's an intellectual game, isn't it? Oh, so you're not saying I'm crazy, you're saying that honest, hard-working farm ponies are stupid. Am I hearing that right? Deep Cover leaned forward a few degrees, and Star Power fell back a corresponding amount, her ears folding and her tail tucked in around her haunches. No, that's not what I meant at all. I just opened my mouth without thinking, and, it came out wrong, and... Star Power looked down at the board. See, this is why you freak me out. I freak you out? Deep Cover asked, emphasizing Star Power's words with a lightening of her own tone and a breathlessness to her speech. Yes, because first you're all Deep Cover plays Go, not Applejack, but then you get offended when I said something bad about farm ponies when I know you grew up in Philadelphia and your mom's an accountant. Star Power's gaze sank down and to the left, leaving her staring down at the star and moon patterned comforter that covered the bed. It's kind of schizophrenic. Or maybe I lived with a farm family for a few months to practice for the role, and they were really sweet, and I'm mad at you for insulting them. Deep Cover never raised her voice, but she added a kick behind her words just the same, and her slow and forceful intonations made her thick accent particularly noticeable. Star Power worked her jaw, but no sound came out, and she shook her head. I'm sorry, she said, pulling towards the edge of the bed. Maybe I should just go. No, wait. Deep Cover raised a hoof, a gentle touch stopping Star Power's exit. Hold up there, Sugar Cube. Maybe I was a little unkind in hearing what you said there. I know you don't mean any harm, but next time try thinking a little more before you speak. Deep Cover leaned her head around to catch Star Power's eyes. You're kinda famous, Star. If you'd said that on TV and some pony in the audience heard Earth ponies instead of farm ponies... She lifted a hoof, indicating Star Power's horn. Right, yeah, no, I totally get it. Thanks. Star Power didn't look back to the board or to Deep Cover, her eyes still on the bed sheets and her body still turned to leave. I guess I did stick my hoof in it there. You kiddin'? You got that dainty unicorn hoof of yours wedged so far into your mouth you're gonna need braces all over again. Deep Cover cracked a smile, and a smaller smile appeared on Star Power's face in kind. But I ain't mad. Not really, anyway. So how's about I accept your apology and we play a nice game? Sure. Star Power smiled a little brighter, and her tail worked its way out from under her haunches. She turned back to the board and to Deep Cover, and lifted her head. Sorry, she said, before considering the board in detail. She took her time, as she thought about her next move, and several times lifted her token only to return it to the pile. Need help? Deep Cover offered. I'm about to lose this bit down here, aren't I? Star Power asked, gesturing at a tangle in the corner of the board. Nope, y'all lost that bit a few turns ago. Just took you till now to notice. Deep Cover's tone was teasing, but her voice was soft, and Star Power nodded. What can I do? Down there? Nothing. But there's over 300 spots on the board, and that mess is only going to give me 6 of them. Call it a good learning experience. Think about what happened and move on. Deep Cover said. Star Power took the advice, and after several more seconds, placed her next token on the far side of the board. The next 5 turns passed in a similar fashion, as Deep Cover captured Star Power's pieces in the first corner, while Star carefully prepared a formation of tokens at the opposite side of the board. "So, why method acting?" Star Power asked during the lull as Deep Cover considered her turn. "Well, part of it's practical. I ain't so good at changing character on a dime like you or First Take, particularly with the accent," Deep Cover said, considering the formation of tokens that Star Power had erected. "Part of it's where my talents lie. I didn't get a changeling coat of arms on my flank because of my deep and abiding love of accounting." She gestured back at her flank. "But mostly, I enjoy it. It's fun to get into a character's head." Carefully, she took her turn. "Oh yeah, that's great. I love getting into a role, feeling what the character feels," Star Power said, her tone picking up. She turned to the board, and the game continued. "Particularly really powerful moments, like Twilight's speeches." "I can tell. Ain't real hard to guess what part of acting makes you happy when you're trying not to smile on camera." Deep Cover gave a small smile and shook her head. "But that's not quite what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Star Power asked, tilting her ears forward as she looked across the board. Deep Cover didn't answer right away. "Feelings..." She bit her lip and let out a breath. "Feelings ain't really what a character's about. They change, you know, shift around. Something as little as forcing yourself to smile can make you feel happy, and if you'll pardon me for being a mite cynical, even the best feelings are just your brain taking a swim in some all-natural drugs." "What, like pot?" Star Power asked. "Like dopamine," Deep Cover said. Star Power blushed, and Deep Cover grinned. "It's okay. I don't think feelings are the best way to understand a character. They're important, sure. Heck, a ton of the method is all about feelings. But it ain't the core of the issue. Like with you, when I walked up. Sure, you were bored, but is bored really the only reason you let me come up and hang out?" "I guess not," Star Power agreed. She carefully thought about her next move, and then picked up her piece. "So, what is the core of the issue, then?" "Power," Deep Cover answered. "Power?" Star Power paused halfway through putting a piece on the board, her eyebrows faintly raised. Deep Cover nodded. "So, I let you play a board game with me... what?" She finished placing her token. "Out of fear you'd squish me?" "Out of fear I'd make you feel bad," Deep Cover nodded. "No, really, think about it for a sec. Shut your eyes." Star Power turned her head slightly and gave Deep Cover a narrow look, but after a moment she complied, shutting her eyes. "Okay, now picture it. You're up here reading. I walk in, ask you if you want some company. Now tell me no." Star Power scrunched up her muzzle. "Sorry, Deep Cover." She delivered a rather wooden performance. "I was actually kind of into my book." "Oh," Deep Cover answered. She reached up and scratched the back of her head with a hoof. "Sure, sorry. Didn't mean to disturb you. You happen to know if Barnstormer is around? Or Butterup?" "No, they're gone." Star Power opened her eyes and reached up a hoof to rub the side of her muzzle, her tail flicking from side to side. "Oh, alright. I'll be heading back to my trailer then." Deep Cover swallowed. "And, hey, tomorrow, if you're not still busy studying or whatever, you should join us. We were gonna get lunch, me and her. And, well, she's just a sweet mare, and you two squabbling really hurt—" "Okay, I get it!" Star Power blurted out, the words coming quick and sharp. Deep Cover snapped her mouth shut immediately. "Yeah, you have the power to make me feel bad. Don't do it again." "Sorry, Sugar Cube," Deep Cover said slowly. "I didn't mean to... Well, I guess it's my turn to apologize." "It's fine. You didn't say anything wrong. That just got to me a little." Star Power's words were quick, and a bit clipped, and Deep Cover only nodded in response. They played out several turns of the game in silence, with pieces moving quickly to the board. Nearly 10 turns later, Star Power spoke again. "I can't believe you did that." "Well, not to put too fine a point on it, darling, but all I did was wheedle a bit so y'all'd feel bad for me. I'd bet bits to wooden nickels that you've done the same at least once in your life. Deepcover's voice was firm but without reproach, and she sat forward a bit. Every pony has. Yeah, when I was a kid and I really wanted something, maybe. Star Power snorted, her gaze fixed firmly on the board. I wasn't thinking, let's see how I can make some pony feel bad. That's kinda my point. The conversation entered a lull as Deepcover considered her turn at length. The mess in the opposite corner was spreading across the board in opposite lines of white and black, with Deepcover's staggered formations standing opposed to Star Power's neat white lines. She spent nearly a full 30 seconds considering her turn in silence, and it was only when she had placed her piece that she spoke again. No pony thinks about it, lest they're a sociopath, I guess. When you were little and did that, you weren't trying to hurt your parents, you just wanted your toy or whatever. And when they gave in to your other requests, they were thinking, I better do this or she'll make me feel bad. But just like some part of you knew what you were doing, some part of them knew you could. Deepcover gestured down at the board and then up at her hat, tipping the Stetson. It's like how in the game, I don't have to put a piece somewhere for you to know I could, and that changes your strategy. Or with Applejack. Sure, she ain't thinking I need to be nice to my family because they got a grip on my heart tighter than a badger's teeth. She's thinking she needs to be nice to her family because she loves them. But there's a part of her that's doing that math, and it influences her more than she'll ever know or admit. That's how you see Applejack? Star Power leaned back from the board. Some, what, rube? Just trying to avoid her family leaving her? No, it's like... Deepcover swirled her hoof in the air. Like the Switchgrass family. They're the farm ponies who helped me get all ready for the role. Let me make a fool of myself for a month more like. I ain't never done an honest day's work in my life before that, and after feeling what it's like, I aim never to do one from this point onward. She smiled, but Star Power didn't smile back. Anyway, Deepcover continued after a small silence, point is, they were nice ponies. They were carrying 2 hay bales at a time where I could barely lift one. I got in the way all the time, I threw out the clutch on the tractor, I dropped things, spilled things, you name it. Never once did they raise their voices to me, except once when I was negligent instead of just wrong. As long as I was trying to learn, they were eager to help me. I still write to 'em today, but, and this is a big but, they had a lot of sheep working on the farm. So? Star Power asked, though her voice was quieter, and she hesitated. A lot of sheep work on farms. Nothing wrong with that. Not in theory, no. But when they're getting paid a percentage of their own wool, a low percentage? Deepcover's tail lashed. There was plenty on that farm that made me want to go, "Who, girl? Y'all know the Confederacy lost the war, right?" Is that why you throw a hissy fit every time we do one of those sheep or cow herding scenes? Star Power asked, earning a sharp glare in response. Saying that I ain't gonna have my name and face plastered on a horse hockey ain't a hissy fit. She growled the word out, and Star Power's ears folded back at once. That scene with, what was her name, Murella? The cow, whatever. It was bad enough as we shot it, even with her selling her milk. If we'd done the version where she was just giving it to Applejack... I didn't think of it that way, Star Power said quickly, tapping her 4 hooves together. Deepcover's expression softened. I know, it's okay. I wasn't accusing you of anything. That's kind of the point, actually. Deepcover lowered her neck to catch Star Power's eyes, and she gradually raised her head. Star's ears rose as well until the two were level again. The Switchgrasses... well, shucks, I can get to the point. They were really nice, really understanding, and racist as all get out. Not because they were evil, but just because that was how they were raised and they didn't think about it too much. It don't undo all the nice things they did for me. Do you follow? I think so. Star Power paused. So, like, Applejack is a rube who is secretly afraid of her family leaving her, but she's also a really nice, dependable pony? So, it's not all bad? Good and bad is the wrong way to think about it. Your turn, by the way. Deepcover gestured at the board, the conversation lapsing into silence as Star Power considered her turn. With fresh eyes, she saw that her position was not as strong as she might have hoped. Her long lines and box formations were disrupted at multiple points by Deep Cover's staggered arrangements, but whenever she considered placing one of her white tokens amongst the black, she realized it would be quickly trapped. "So, I'm trying to form a circle, right?" Star Power asked. "Or a box, so I can capture territory?" "You're trying to win the game," Deep Cover replied. "Lines, and boxes by extension, can be a good way to do that because they connect pieces, and connecting pieces can make them harder to capture. But if you see one of your lines getting disrupted, don't think about how you fix the line, think about how you win the game. Might be that line ain't serving its purpose." Star Power nodded, her horn shimmering as her token weaved indecisively over the board. Finally, she placed it. "There. So, good and bad isn't how you think of it?" "Right. I mean, sure, some ponies are sadists or get off on seeing others hurt or whatnot, and I guess you could call that bad if you want. But ponies like that," Deep Cover sharply flicked her tail, "they ain't the rule. With the switchgrasses, the only difference between me and the sheep was that if I got lonely and sad, that made them hurt, but if the sheep got upset, that didn't. That means that I had power over them, or little anyway, and the sheep didn't. That's the core of it. Everything else followed from that." "And that isn't bad?" Star Power asked. "Them not caring if some pony, some sheep, else gets hurt?" "Depends. How many beggars did you pass on the way to work today?" Deep Cover asked, quirking a small smile as she did. Star Power lifted a hoof to her mouth, a blush coming to her cheeks as her ears tilted back. "See what I mean? No, don't feel bad." She lifted a hoof. "I don't give money to beggars neither. But the point is, hearing them plead don't make you feel a thing. But I bet if I walked in saying I'd lost my bags and needed 6 bits for the bus, you'd feel at least a little guilty if you said no." "But that's different," Star Power replied, a little insistent. "If I gave you 6 bits, it would be a one-time thing. The ponies on the street will be there every day." "Sure, there's reasons some ponies got power over you and some don't." Deep Cover nodded. "Sometimes even good reasons. Like, basic example, you'd feel a lot worse watching an innocent pony get roughed up than watching a criminal get hauled off to jail. But at the instinctual level, like the fundamental level, reason don't enter into it. Reason ain't what drives ponies." "I think that might be the most cynical thing I've ever heard," said Star Power, momentarily refocusing her eyes on the board. It was getting crowded, and they'd gone a long time without any captures as increasingly complex patterns and lines wove across the table. "And completely wrong besides. What about positive emotions? What about love?" "Mutually assured destruction," Deep Cover replied. "Sure, you can hurt your spouse something deep, but they can hurt you too. So neither of you ever will, which is safe, and safe feels good. So love feels good." "No, that's the most cynical thing I've ever heard." Star Power giggled. "Wait, so according to you, love is madness?" "Y'all are the one that said it, not me." Deep Cover shrugged, though a small smile appeared on her face as well. "A ridiculous sentiment, even?" Star laughed again. "Wow, changelings really are your spirit animal." "I suppose so," Deep Cover said. She didn't elaborate, taking her turn as Star giggled. But before she could speak again, Star Power reached out, touching her foreleg. "No," Star said. She paused a moment to suppress her laughter, forcing a more serious expression onto her face. "No, I'm sorry for laughing. It does seem a little crazy to me, but I'm not laughing at you. I'm curious. So, is this how you see method acting? Understanding how your character sees power deep down?" Deep Cover nodded. "So, how does Applejack see it then?" "Her family would be the starting point," Deep Cover said, pausing to lay her piece on the board. "They got her fixed 2 ways from Sunday. See, Twilight and etc., they're friends, sure, and yeah, it would hurt if they went on their own way. But with family, it's more than that. They ain't just ponies she cares about and spends a lot of time with. So much of who she is tied up with how the Apple family stays together. So much that she just about rips out her heart and puts it in her hooves. So you best believe she feels every twitch of their legs and every groove of their horseshoes." I'm not sure I see that. Star Power bit her lip, then spoke again. I mean, I think if she was always worrying about her family, she'd be a lot more controlling or possessive. Didn't say she was always worrying, Deep Cover said. Your parents got a heck of a lot of power over you, and mine over me, point in fact. But we don't spend all day and night worrying about what they think of us. No, that would be a little crazy, Star Power agreed. But, okay, what about Twilight then? How does Applejack feel about her? It ain't about feelings, remember? Deep Cover twitched an ear, glancing off into the room before returning her gaze to Star Power. But complicated. Twilight's got some power over her, sure, but more than that, Twilight's drawing her out into the bigger world. Used to be nothing outside the farm, and the family could do her a lick of harm. But now? Now she's got to care about Celestia and Equestria and the Crystal Empire and Discord and who knows what else. Leaves her mighty vulnerable. Deep Cover took a turn. That's why she goes out of her way to be nice to Twilight. Finds excuses to engage with her and such. If hanging out with her new friends makes her so vulnerable, why doesn't she cut them off? Star Power asked. I mean, go back to her farm. Because on the farm, her family has her. It's the good and the bad, see? She explained, laying her token. When a few ponies got all the power over you, sure, maybe you can ride it clean. But if they decide to hurt you bad, you're gonna feel it. When the same power's split up between a lot of ponies, one of them will hurt you, sure as sure, but you'll survive. Same with AJ. Twilight gives her that freedom so she can't get encircled. Sure, sometimes her family will show up in her life. She ain't never gonna be able to change that. But now her position's stronger. I thought you just said her position was more vulnerable, Star Power asked. It's both, Deep Cover insisted. It doesn't have those nice straight lines. It's not gonna be a clean win. She can't box up her whole board in one go. So she's vulnerable. A ragged line. That's gonna lose places. But it's also gonna win the game. Deep Cover took her turn. Speaking of, Star Power looked down at the board. She squinted. I haven't lost. Deep Cover twitched her tail and smiled. I'm pretty sure you have. The next 5 turns passed quickly. The next 20 after that passed slowly, as Star Power considered every move at length. Her placements became slow and erratic, while Deep Cover's were quick and precise. The lines that earlier had seemed ragged suddenly solidified into eyes that prevented capture, and encircling formations that swept white tokens from the board. Star moved to seal off a few of her own arrangements, but she could recognize a crushing defeat when she saw it, and soon lifted her hoof to her temples. Pass, she finally called. And game. You know, there's such a thing as going easy on a beginner. I prefer it my way, Deep Cover said with a quick and neat cadence, sliding from the bed and giving a long stretch of her back legs. But if y'all'd like a chance to give me my just desserts, I could be persuaded to see my way to a rematch. Maybe make this a regular thing? Oh, yeah. Star Power nodded. Maybe now? I'd love to, but I should get back on out. I don't want to miss my family if they're early. Waiting don't help Ma's mood none. Deep Cover slid the tokens off the board, but before she could sort them, Star Power's unicorn magic made them all float. The tokens zipped back into their bags, returning to the shelf along with the board. I had a lot of fun, Star. Thanks for listening to me yap about acting. Oh, sure thing. Good luck with your family. She watched as Deep Cover trotted back into the studio, but before she left, Star rose from the bed. Cover, hold on. Deep Cover stopped, looking back over her shoulder. After all this... Okay, I'm sorry if this is rude, but, can I hear you say something without the accent? Please? Deep Cover mulled over the request for a moment, flicking her tail to and fro. Then she spoke. Look, Twi, let's be honest here, she answered, in a perfect imitation of Rainbow Dash's voice. I've got, this whole thing going, and it's way too awesome to blow, so not happening. Deep Cover grinned, resuming her march to the door. Cover? You know that's not what I meant. Catch you later, Twi, shouted Rainbow Dash, as Deep Cover pushed her way out of the studio doors and they slammed shut behind her. Star Power snorted, lashing her tail, and only gradually returned to the bed. She did not pick the book up right away, but instead twisted and turned. She looked through the shelves without picking anything up, and then pulled the Go board over to angrily stare at it. Finally, after 10 fitful minutes, she managed to calm down enough to focus on her words again, and resumed her reading. The end.